soldier on and make the best of our time. So,
Yeah.
folks, I just want to say thank you to Gene for the opportunity to come and talk to you and for you guys investing a little bit of time with me today. I want to kind of build on one thing that Gene said earlier. I am not a lecturer. I am a servant who is here to help us have a conversation about how we can be better at what we do. I started kind of marketing myself about 10 or 15 years ago as Coach Dan because I really believe that that's the value that I bring. I help people think through and discover things that they can do that they never imagined before. So today is going to be less about me telling you how to do things and more facilitating a conversation and maybe challenging us all to think a little bit differently about how we support the people that we support as they are trying to be better at creating value for their customers and their shareholders. So, Gene did a nice introduction. We do go a ways back, having worked at a place that did its best not to change despite our best efforts. Although I do think we did a lot of good with the people that we worked with. In addition to all the things, I am also an amateur meat smoker. Got my first charcoal smoker about 4 years ago, and haven't looked back since. A book reader, a bourbon sipper, a cheese maker. So, in addition to helping people change, I also have a life outside. So, if anybody has any common interests, reach out and let's talk smoking meat or sipping bourbon. All right, so that's enough about me. I would like to actually hear from you guys. So, I'm going to be brave and ask you guys to come off mute for a second and share with the group. Has anybody in the past part of their careers been a part of a transformation or a big structure changed where processes changed, but the people really didn't? In other words, we declared the transformation a success, but things really didn't change. Anybody out there been a part of that, seen that? Pierre? Yeah.
Could, I could raise my hand if you like.
Oh, I'd
Uh,
love to hear about it. Could you tell me what kind of transformation was it? What
yeah,
didn't change and who didn't change?
I was working for one of the big four banks, and they went through the process. I think probably everyone in this call has been through this, where we changed over to Agile. It used to be waterfall process, and we changed to Agile. And for some teams, initially there was definitely struggles, but one of the teams I worked on, it actually worked okay. Um, yeah, that's basically it, I guess.
That's great. So, but did you observe parts of the organization that made it difficult for that change to happen, Doug?
In my case, I have to say, I think they did a reasonable job because they took a long time to get there. Like I was recommending Agile back in, 2000, and they
Mm,
were like, Robinson, what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? We'll never do it. And then you know what happened 10 years later. They're like, I think we should start looking at this Agile. But because it's a conservative, one of the big four banks,
yeah.
let's take some time. Let's bring in professional coaches who know how to do this. So they took a lot of time to get ready to do it. They were very careful about it, and I think that's the only reason it seemed to succeed.
Okay.
Most of the teams that I know, they seem to do fairly well at it, but they also put a Scrum master who brought in from outside that knew what they were doing, and they assigned a Scrum master, professional Scrum master, to every team.
Got it. Okay, great. So good experience there. Who else has been part of a transformation where the process or the structure changed, but the behaviors on or around the team really didn't?
I could go, Dan. We talk a lot about this during our touch points, anyways, but some of the strange behaviors that I have seen is that they say we are doing all in agile transformation, but in bits and pieces, they're doing their own waterfall or whatever previous behaviors hidden behind the agile curtain, right? So, for example, teams working on something, sprint started, something really important came up, and stakeholder says, "Hey, we need this done. Can you please help us?" But the team or the product owner says, too late, too bad. Our sprint started and our backlog shall not be disturbed. So we will not work on this until next sprint starts. So what's the point of going agile if you forget your people and your interactions and hide behind this curtain, right? So
I love it, Sai. Thank you for that. I'm going to look for one more example. Somebody else who's been a part of a large transformation. Oh, Pierre and one other. I guess we'll do two. Pierre, we'll go you, and then I can't see who the second person is.
Yeah, so basically in a governmental organization where there's an agile transformation, but we don't really want to change. You can detect it when the language doesn't change. So instead of having, for example, a product owner, you have an agile project manager. And instead of having a scrum master, we have an agile team lead, and so on and so on. So we don't change the language. If you don't change the language, it means you don't understand and you don't, the culture is bound in the language. So if you don't change the language, you cannot change the culture.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you, Pierre. And there was one other person. Did you drop your hand? Looks like you did. Okay.
And
So,
hey, Daniel.
oh, yes.
One super quick comment. I just want to say that I feel like the reason I'm here is I feel like I got really lucky on that team that I worked on that did well. I'm not sure that that was true of the hundreds of other teams at that bank. So.
Oh, for sure. And, Doug, we're going to celebrate successes. We're going to celebrate learning as well, right? Some work, some don't. And there's a myriad of reasons why these transformations get so far and then they feel like they stall or they feel like they fall back or backslide. Somebody had made a comment about, it was Nawaz had suggested that they changed a bit, but then we roll back to our old ways as soon as a new leader took over. Sometimes things work out really well, but a lot of times we run into some resistance. And it got me to thinking, we often blame it on a lack of buy-in, right? This is a great idea, but not everybody's bought in. We've got pieces of the organization who don't really want to change. And I think that can be a really, really expensive misdiagnosis of a problem. I got super curious and I went out and started to do some research for the last 25 years or so. How many dollars have been wasted on technology transformations that failed? And while I discovered there was no definitive answer, I actually got super discouraged and stopped counting the dollars when I got to 12 billion. So the logos that you see on the screen right now are all white papered cases of organizations who invested heavily in a technology and process transformation that ended up failing and rolling back to their original operating model. $12 billion in expense out the door for transformations that never really took hold. And it got me wondering, what if we are part of to blame, the way that we think about transformation, the way that we design our transformations? What if we're a part of that, but instead of looking at what we're doing and how we're designing things, we fall back on the lack of buy-in, the management resistance, the frozen middle, the organizational antibodies, the cultural impediments, all of those reasons that we hear all the time. So got me thinking a little bit about Larman's laws and what it's like to be a manager during these kinds of changes. So I thought that it would be interesting if we could just kind of do a quick refresher. Do me a favor, raise your hand in Zoom here if you are familiar with Larman's laws. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so handful of us raised our hands. Larman's laws are a very common way of thinking about the challenges that are inherent in any kind of a transformation, technology, process, reorganizations, or whatever. It's a way of thinking about the reason why people resist the changes. And Larman's laws are pretty simple and straightforward. The first one is that organizations are wired to protect existing manager and specialist roles. We've all been there, right? We try to put together a cross-functional team, and we end up asking to have a database administrator or a data analyst added on to a Scrum team. What's the first thing we hear when we ask that? Anybody? Can I have a database manager to be full-time on this Scrum team to work on this product? I don't know about you guys. First thing I hear back is, I don't have enough of them. I don't have enough. I can't give you a full-time person from this job because everybody else needs this person. Our organization, yep, only part-time availability. Thank you, Ramesh. Organizations are specifically designed in the waterfall way of working to protect those specialists and to protect their capacity so that they can spread them across multiple areas. Larman's law number 2, change will get renamed and renamed and renamed until it roughly means the old thing. Sai had mentioned this earlier, doing the old way of working behind the screen of agility, right? I call it relabeling instead of reorganizing. Larman's law 3, change gets dismissed as too pure, theoretical, or wrong for our context. This will never work here. We don't do things this way here, right? It gets out of the box. It gets challenged as this will never work here because what we have been doing is the only way things work. Larman's law number 4, displaced managers or managers that teams that get dissolved or reorganized into cross-functional teams, those displaced managers often become coaches or champions of the change. I don't know who came up with that idea originally, but we see it that way. Everybody's a snowflake, capital K. Yep. Good comments in the commentary. Keep it coming. I agree. It's the big A versus little a debate. And MC, you're right. Everybody is a special snowflake and everybody needs to be protected. 5th Larman's law, you guys, this is the one that really strikes me and resonates with me. The culture of an organization will follow the structure. How the organization is structured will very much influence the culture that is allowed to flourish within that organization. And that's one of the things that I think we talk about a lot as transformers, as agilists, as less practitioners, but we feel very limited in what we're able to do. And what I'd like to do is explore why that might be the case.
Hey, Daniel, quick question.
Yes.
Is it Craig Larman?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. So any questions about Larman's laws? Do these make sense? Any of these resonate? Anybody seen these happen out in the wild? Oh, and I will warn you guys, I am a proud father of 2 20-year-old daughters. I have had a lifetime of passive-aggressive silence, so you might as well answer the question because I can outweight you.
Folks, do not be shy.
Alessandra's seen it in the wild. Alessandra, can you give me would you be willing to come off mute and tell us which one of the laws you've seen out in the wild?
I feel like I've seen most of them, to be honest. I've been at a number of organizations that have tried changing, and I've seen, the orgs are wired to protect existing manager and specialists roles. Change gets renamed until it means roughly the same thing. Change gets dismissed as wrong for our context, like we have to do things our way, we can't change this way. I haven't seen number 4 as much, but I've also seen number 5.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Well, first off, thank you for sharing, and I'm sorry you had to go through all of that. MC, how about you?
I think the one that sticks out for me, I had a conversation with a colleague here recently, and they were talking about working in a previous organization where there was a transition, an agile transformation. The teams were supposed to adopt Scrum. There was all the pushback and the resistance. And what leadership eventually did was they said, well, we're going to create our own version of Scrum. And by the time it was all said and done, it was just, more lipstick on the pig.
Squatterfall.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So I think we can concede most of us have seen most of these things out in the wild, and it is real. Larman's laws are just that. They are laws. You can expect to see one or more of these things in a transformation. So now I'm going to ask another question. So you guys tell me, in your past experience, how do people usually become managers? What are some reasons that people become managers? Pierre?
Well, they were very good technically in their fields. They had successes technically, so they are promoted as managers.
Okay. That's right. MC shared in chat because they are A players. That's right. Superheroes, the go-to person. Nawaz, I'm just envisioning you doing your Superman pose as you typed that out. That's the only way to go up the ladder, is to become a manager. You're right. Someone retired or left the company. Is that survival of the fittest or outlast? All right. So we've kind of nailed most of the reasons why I've got on the slide here. People become managers because they do it better than everybody else, task mastery, because they get the job done. They're successful project managers or project executors. They asked for it. They aspired to be it, so they angled and finagled and worked their way into that role. And the last one, which Sai just mentioned, it was the only way to make more money. It was either up or be stuck. And that's a super interesting way to think about things. As we think about transformation, the people who are impacted by the change, and let's face it, a lot of the managers that get caught up, especially in larger scale transformations, are not the ones who decided to adopt Scrum. They're not the ones who decided to make the change. They get stuck in a particular spot of having to execute the strategy that has been delivered to them. And when I talk about execute the strategy, I don't just mean do the change. I also mean achieve the business results while you're doing the change. So executives still want to make a profit while they are undergoing the transformation. And that is a very tricky thing for managers to do. Okay. They are there to translate what leadership said to do into making sure that the people around them and under them are doing the things that they need to do to execute that strategy. The other role of a manager, and this may be unpopular, but I'm going to hold this one out because I'm an optimist. The other role is to develop and care for the people. Okay? So execute the strategy, grow and care for the people. And this is what I call a manager's vice, because sometimes these things can be conflicting, right? And I know Pierre and Saya and I are actually working together right now, and we see it all the time, right? Deliver the business results, investing in time into growing and growing your people, right? But then you get into the reality of quarterly planning, monthly planning, sprint planning, and you've got more priorities than you've got capacity to deliver it, and you have no time to deliver those people. So how are you supposed to deliver on that dual mandate? My perspective, managers often do the best that they can to try to balance those things. But when we start to ratchet up the pressure from the top or the pressure from the bottom, there's not a whole lot of place for that to go. Guys, does that make sense? Does the manager vice make sense to anybody, or anybody want to challenge me on this idea? Love to hear somebody who says I'm seeing it wrong. Nawaz?
If you don't mind, Martin here. Um, no, I fully agree, but I would probably think about changing the arrows to be bidirectional, because I think it's also responsibility of a manager to kick a bit the upper folk to adapt, but the same with the people also. Hey, we need to achieve certain business results. How can we make it happen? So this dialogue, this feedback loop, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you had that in the pipeline, but I just noticed that.
No, Martin, I love that. And I firmly believe, as a big believer, the values of agility, the manifesto, all of those things resonate very deeply with me. I believe those arrows should be bidirectional too. And I think part of why we transform is to make those arrows bidirectional. I don't think that they are that by default. I think that's why we try to challenge with mindset changes, with operational changes, with framework changes to try to get those arrows to become bidirectional. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let me just take a peek here. In the midst of the transformation, who owns yes. Yes. MC, that's a great question, right? That's often the manager who's stuck saying, look, we're busy doing this change, so we can't do this. And the executive says, what? Figure it out. We need the profits. Figure it out, right? That vice gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So, question, Nawaz? Accidental hand raise. Okay, so question for you guys. Next question, okay? What are some things that happen to managers when we do these transformations? When we go in and flatten an organization, when we put in a less framework or even a safe framework, what happens to that management layer that gets displaced? What happens to those human beings generally? Anybody have any experience? Pierre?
Well, there are sometimes some confusions because there's this intention that comes from upstairs to shift to an agile company. And then there's agile coaches helping transform the squads. The managers are stuck in between. Sometimes upstairs, they don't understand that it's a cultural change. And the middle managers are stuck with this transformation where they need to speak both languages. They need to speak the upstairs language and the agile language.
Yep, absolutely. Sai mentioned in chat that they are lost or confused with their identity. I used to be a manager, I used to be in charge, and now what am I? MC mentioned in chat, some are laid off as part of the bloat. You guys could have written, I don't even know why I'm talking to you. You guys are nailing most of my points without me actually saying them. They become highly skilled individual contributors, right? You're no longer a manager, and you are now on a team, maybe a product owner, right? Maybe an architect, but now you're on a team. Pierre, are you looking to chime in, or do you just have your hand up? Okay, just making sure. They may become scrum masters or coaches. That's kind of my favorite thing to observe. And if you couldn't sense my wryness and my irony there, we'll get to know each other better. They're transitioned out of the company, and this one's my favorite, they inherit the managers that are left inherit way too many people to manage well, right? We end up with managers who have 15, 16, 17 direct reports trying to be a manager and navigate this change while caring for all those people. Guys, how do you think the managers going through this feel? Threatened.
Dan, I'd say stressed out, overwhelmed, anxious, a lot of bad emotions.
I agree.
And throw in one quick comment on at the bank when they did that, they had like 11 levels and they reduced it down to 7. And so, that 0.5 really stands out. But what they did was they said, okay, you guys aren't involved anymore in the day-to-day project stuff. The agile teams will handle that. You guys, as the first line managers, are now just resource managers, and you'll do your weekly one-on-ones with your staff, but you're not getting involved in the day-to-day, anything to do with any of the projects that the agile teams are working on, which was a
Nailed it.
huge, yeah, that was a massive change.
Absolutely. And what you guys are describing and some of the words that you used creates another dimension to this vice that we were thinking about, right? So those who are managers who remain managers through the transformation, not only execute strategy, not only develop the people, but now I have to rethink how I show value as an employee, because throughout that whole process of flattening and right sizing and all of the words that we put in place to really say we're going to reduce the number of people we've got working on things, all of those things trigger all of those side boxes. How do I maintain my identity? How do I show value as an employee? Okay. Now remember, when we started off about all of this, we were talking about the frozen center, the organizational impediments, right? And we often talk about that frozen middle, the managers who are resisting the change. Are we kind of getting a picture, a little bit of empathy on why those managers might be resisting the change? Just resonating with anybody? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a hand raise or something. Okay. Awesome. All right. So my argument, guys, is that Larman suggests the why we end up with this organizational resistance or why transformations stall and fail. I think that vice that we just talked about, not only the top down, but the side to side, points us towards some what's or some what things we might consider doing as we're working to design the next transformation or even make adjustments to our current one. 4 things to consider from a manager's perspective as we are designing change or as we were helping people navigate this change, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about these 4 as we go, but we're going to think about things like mismatched objectives. We're going to talk about being very explicit in how we redefine the value contribution that these human beings bring. We're going to do a quick talk about the loss of power, and then we're going to talk a little bit about something that I call promotion gravity. So we're going to consider those things, and let me make sure I've got everything queued up right, and I do. Okay, so number 1, mismatched performance objectives. Raise your hand in the chat or in the Zoom if you work at a company that does annual performance reviews and annual performance objective cadences. I'm going to raise my hand. 5, 6, 7, about half. Okay, so about half of us work at companies or around companies. Let's think about that. We set our performance objectives in January. We are given the list of things that we are to achieve by the end of the year. And at the end of the year, we are asked in a performance objective ceremony, did you complete your objectives? And why should I consider you meets, exceeds, or needs improvement? Okay. As we're going through a transformation, we often neglect to intentionally reset those objectives for the people who are transforming. We're paying them to do what we put in their performance objectives, but then halfway through the year, we're challenging them to do things differently. And that creates an awful lot of tension. So what do you guys think we might consider doing as transformation specialists, as transformation supporters? What are some things that we might try to do to help minimize this constraint, this cultural and structural thing that's happening? Anybody have any ideas?
I'm gonna I'm going to prime the pump. I know I shouldn't be speaking. I'm just the host. Eradicate, swipe away, just reduce to null all of those meaningless processes that do not add value. That would be it. That would be one.
I love it. And Gene sweeps in with the powerful answer. Just wipe it all away. And I agree. I wish we could do that. Pierre?
Well, I'm not sure about the solution, but I think in Agile, we really want people to work together. I'm talking about.
Oh, did Pierre freeze or did I freeze?
I'm good.
Okay.
Are you good? Can you hear me?
I can now. Yep.
Okay, so I was saying maybe there's a need for like a group level objective.
I think that's great. Guys, we pretty much nailed it in my first two. Oh, MC, go ahead.
I was going to kind of along the lines of what Gene was talking about. I think it's important to do that reset, that he mentioned. I also think it's important to bring people along for the ride, meaning you sit down together and look at the old objectives and make a collective decision on what to keep and what to throw out. And that way there's buy-in.
I love that. I love that. So, a couple of fixes that I had suggested. You guys nailed them. We realign individual performance objectives for everyone. And I would invite you to pay close attention to what I put in the parentheses there. And tangent to the change. Okay. We do sometimes, and I've seen this a few times now, go and do the rewrite of the objectives for the people who are in the midst of the change, right? If you're using a crew squad structure, crew leaders may get some rewritten performance objectives, squad members may get some. But how often do we look at the performance objectives of their HR business partners, or the performance objectives of their finance partners, or their legal and compliance partners? So my challenge is, again, we need to, as professionals who are supporting these, look not just at the people who are caught in the vice, but the things that are causing the vice to tighten. The other one is to retrain people managers on how to write and assign shared objectives or shared outcomes that cross organizational boundaries. Okay. All right. Number two, redefinition of value. Okay. They woke up one morning and all of a sudden what value they were contributed is now happening over there instead of in their pond. Right. So what are some things we might consider as professionals as we're designing our transformation? What are some things we might consider as we're thinking about how to support managers through these kinds of a change from a value proposition perspective? I know, MC. I'm a dreamer. What can I say?
And Daniel, are you saying, as an example, something that we were working on that we thought was of high value or one of the top, 5, top 10 or whatever, all of a sudden is not, and now you're working adjacent to it in something that's of lesser value, or vice
versa? It could be. It could be. Somebody earlier mentioned people became managers because they were the superheroes, right? The go-to person. In a more cross-functional collaborative environment where we're challenging people to be more T-shaped, to be more collaborative in developing solutions, that superhero becomes less, or should become less valuable. And the emphasis should become on how the team is solving problems effectively and efficiently. So it's not only just my project isn't a priority anymore. How I worked is also a challenge. Redefined. I love it, Rick. That's perfect. Redefine that role from manager to enabling leader. I love that. I have a couple of suggestions: redefining and redesigning how value is rewarded and incented, right? Individual contributors are great. Team success is even better. Manfred, what you got, my friend?
No, sorry, it was accident.
Oh, Manfred is so overwhelmed with the wisdom that we're sharing on the slides that he lost control of his clicking.
Absolutely.
But I am curious. What do you think of some of the solutions here? Change the way that leaders are incented to drive value, right? A lot of times it's get the work done instead of achieve the result. A lot of times it's teams are incented to just follow the task list instead of designing the solutions. We, as transformation specialists, need to encourage our leaders to turn that on its side. Instead of asking people to do tasks, we should be starting to incent and reward them for working together to solve problems. Outcome over output. Those are in my notes, MC. The whole output over outcome idea fits here. All right, number 3, loss of perceived power. I used to decide, and now someone else or the team decides. How do we tackle this? What are some things we need to think about from an organizational perspective to start to tackle this? Any thoughts?
Maybe it's that idea of, I don't know, but control versus delegation. And like Rick said, enabling or empowering the team. It's a different mindset, right?
Mm-hmm. I love it. Good.
Dan, on this one, I struggle. I really, really do. And unfortunately, part of the reason I struggle is because, and I've seen this in too many situations where these people, right, these leaders, they get off on the power that they have and they enjoy it. And it gives them a sense of who they are, their worth. I get to direct things. And when you make that change, it starts to get at them fundamentally.
Mm-hmm.
So I struggle with this one.
And I think this one is tricky, right? Because it is, you are exactly right. There are some people who are incented and rewarded. Their identity is wrapped up in that. There are others who are different. So to me, it's not a one size fits all silver bullet. Pierre?
Yeah, exactly. It's about the identity. When there's some, big changes in the company, well, people change roles, titles. It may feel like their identity has been attacked.
Yeah, I agree. So some possible fixes. And again, guys, no one size fits all. And I can promise you that I have tried these things and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Okay. You're going to have to figure out and feel it through and what's going to work, and you're going to have to test and learn. But think about where authority used to be and what authority meant. Authority used to be deciding what to do and telling other people to do it, right? What if we were to start shifting authority away from those who decide what to do toward those who are working together to bring the solution to life? Creating roles for those folks who like to be the problem solver. A senior principal architect whose role is to understand what the guardrails are and to guide the team towards solutions. But rather than incenting the behavior to be the one who decided, be the one incenting the behavior to generate and bring the group to consensus to drive forward. Again, no one size fits all, but these are the things, and these are very different, right? Imagine having a conversation with your HR business partner about changing this kind of dynamic on your group. But without these kinds of things, you're going to reinforce that frozen middle. Okay. Rick says, yeah, I have baseball caps that I wear that says we all win together. A big believer in that. It has to be a we instead of an I. World is too complex for a bunch of eyes running around trying to be superheroes. Guys, does this make sense? All right. And number 4, I'm sorry?
I was going to say that doesn't, you know what, that principal role is exactly what the bank did to.
And again, sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. It really has to go along with the other changes and the other considerations. Like I said, there's not a silver bullet. This is tuning a bunch of dials. Okay. 4th one, promotion gravity. Okay. So we removed a layer or 2 or 5, right? Are we rewarding people and incenting people to broaden their skills, or is everybody still fighting now for fewer manager slots to promote into? So, what are some things that a transformation leader might consider as they're trying to minimize this idea, right? Used to be, if I was a senior underwater basket weaver, my next step, logical step, would be a team leader and then a manager. Well, we don't have team leaders or managers anymore. Now we have pod leaders, right? So we've eliminated a role. Now what do I do? There you go. Incentivize growing skills with a monetary bonus. I love that. Monty, I want to come work for you, brother.
Thank you.
This one is also we have to kind of develop what's the right stew, what ingredients do we need to put together to make that happen. But as orgs flatten, and I believe they should, I think a lot of the problems we run into with speed, with agility, with being able to react quickly is we do have too many layers in which things seem to need to flow through. Flatten organizations, we need to create incentives, defined career growth to incent people to become broader, not just deeper, right? That means, MC, if you are an Oracle database specialist, now you also get the opportunity to learn how to write APIs to talk to that, because that actually helps your squad solve problems faster, right? That's not in your swim lane. Your direct database manager probably would be having some kind of a hemorrhage, right, if we said that. But those are the kinds of things we need to think differently. We need to start thinking adjacent and challenging the things that have been in place for years, career pathing, job descriptions, job balancing, all those fancy HR words. We need to start challenging those to start asking, why is it pointing up instead of pointing out? This makes sense? So are you ready for a bad pun? Anybody? I had to throw a pun in here. So if you want less resistance, yay, design a safe, boo, place to land. Come on. All right. Things to consider as you're moving forward, right? Realigning objectives, redefining what value means. Value's not in the decision, it's in solving the problem. Authority, right? Not in what to do, but how to do it. Breadth, instead of up and out, it's adjacent and wider. If we can find, yeah, no doubt. MC says not to give up my day job. If we can start to design these things okay, into our solutions, if we can start to think more broadly ourselves, other than the teams that we're trying to help. Doug, you mentioned you had a great experience with a team, right? You also kind of hinted that maybe that might have not been a common experience across the whole organization, right? We need to start looking at what is around those teams in order to start removing some of these impediments. In other words, we need to improve our design in order to make that better for those managers, unfreeze that middle, and help them to remove some of that resistance. All right, I am looking at time and I am realizing that I have prepared more content than I have time for. So I'm going to flow through these things because I've already alluded to them, okay? When we build out our transformations, we often focus on these things, right? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? What's the work that needs to be done? And who are the people that need to change? And we focus in on those. And a lot of times we do a really good job with that, right? Doug had some examples. A couple of you other folks had some examples where we did a good job with helping the team to transform. But in thinking about our transformation, I would challenge us to think about the system around those people who support those people who are doing the work. So maybe we should consider some folks we don't usually think about as needing to change as well. Okay. And you can read through these, and Jean is going to be sending out the slides, and I am on LinkedIn. Send me a message. We can chat about this until the cows come home if you'd like. But I just picked 3 random, right? There are countless other organizations that also need to think about what do they need to change in order to make this system around the teams that are trying to do the value work more effectively and efficiently. HRBPs, finance partners. Anybody ever ask finance to embed an analyst on a squad or in a crew dedicated to supporting that crew achieve their objectives? I've been laughed out of many an office. But wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if a product group or a crew or a squad of squads or a scrum of scrums had a dedicated financial analyst to help size opportunity, to help develop hypothesis and develop ROI, to start to work through those modeling so that we could build in that capability into the decision instead of just reporting on it, right? We should be pushing the boundaries and thinking outside of the people who need to change. And a shameless plug. If you all would like to know a little bit more, okay, I have written a book. It is not bad. It is talking about how to think about measuring what we're talking about here. We always focus on being effective. We always focus on being efficient. We very rarely, if ever, measure and balance effective, efficient, and engaged. So something to consider. If you don't want to buy the book, again, send me a message. I'll talk about it for free. I'm a terrible entrepreneur. But ultimately, I would challenge us all, guys, to start thinking about how do we change the conversation away from why are these people not changing to what are we doing that's keeping these people from changing? So I'm going to ask you, what's stopping us from designing transformations to negate Larman's laws and to loosen that vice? What's stopping us? Now, this is where you guys can tell me why we can't do any of this. No objections? All right, so now I'm going to ask the really personal and tough question. What are you taking away from this talk, and what are you going to be doing differently? And with that, I'm going to stop the screen share so I can see everybody's faces, and I would love to hear. What are you guys taking away from this, and what's one thing you're going to try differently?
Hey, folks, this is the opportunity to exchange directly. Please.
Dan, the piece for me, coming away, I really liked the piece where you talked about performance objectives and resetting those. And I'm working with a team right now that's in the midst of this mess, and that's going to be done. We're going to meet on it on Monday, and that'll be one of the suggestions.
Right? MC, I would love to hear how that conversation goes. If you don't mind pinging me on LinkedIn and just letting me know. Again, not selling a thing. I'm just super curious. If you found a way to have that conversation and make it resonate, I want to learn from it.
Yes, sir.
All right, folks, anyone else? Before we wrap up, take another opportunity to ask Dan a question or make a comment.
Love
Yeah.
that, Rick.
It's nice. Yeah, Rick, go. If you want to have, want to say something by voice.
I was going to say, I used to be a data analyst, and a lot of times they would ignore me from meetings that infected me, and that drove me mad because later I would see the results of their planning, which was wrong, and then I'd have to fix it and tell them they're wrong, and then they'd have to go back and fix it. So, as being a data analyst, I can see your point where it's helpful to have them in the design phase.
I would rather design in quality and experiments than test them in later or fix them in later.
And
So,
it's
well done, Forrest.
The timing on your comment for us, because I was just about to mention, the idea of collaboration over superhero, and your comment tells me that was not a collaborative environment, or at least you were excluded. And where I worked, we were senior managers above our managers would always say, please, guys, make sure you're including everybody, that especially those quiet voices in the room. There's always those ones like me who will speak up, but lots of quiet people. And he would tell us lead, like I was a dev lead, please seek out their voices. And so, Forrest, you would have been one of those I would have been looking for to bring into the conversation, not exclude.
I love it. All right. Well, Gene, I said I would keep it to under an hour. Mission accomplished.
That would be great. So we can give people back their time, the minute that's remaining. Dan, personally, I want to thank you very much for joining and doing this great presentation for all of us. A very touchy subject. I have some extra assets to share too, but I wanted to give you the full podium exposure because this is just too, it's never stale. It's never too late to discuss this. Performance appraisals, motivation, performance, career path. Great stuff. Thank you very much. I'm going to have your deck whenever you send it to me with the video. Hopefully it will come out right. We'll make it available in the next 24 to 48 hours, folks. Perhaps you can distribute it further. And please do reach out to Dan personally on LinkedIn or in any other way and pick his brain. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Dan, personal, thank you. Have a good one. Have a
Thanks,
good
guys.
for the day.
Have a great one.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
weekend. Cheers.
Thank you.